Heart to Heart with our podcast with Stella, where we have courageous conversations about the moments that redefine us, the decisions that require strength, clarity, and deep alignment. Today's episode is titled, What Touched Her Heart Enough to Walk Away? Sometimes success isn't about climbing higher, it's about listening inward. It's about recognizing when something no longer aligns with who you are becoming and having the courage to choose differently. And I'm so honored to welcome Carla Cohen, business strategist, performance mentor, and best-selling author. And she's also a regional director of Global Women, which I am part of, and I'm so proud to be part of that group. It's an amazing community. Carla is a dynamic leader who helps individuals uh, and organizations elevate their performance and strengthen their emotional intelligence and step into greater clarity and confidence. Through her work as a strategist and mentor, she empowers others to align success with purpose, not just professionally, but personally. Carla, welcome to Heart to Heart.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited that we get this time together. So this is going to be fun.
Yes, always. We got to make it fun, always.
If it isn't fun, don't do it.
Exactly. I agree 100%. Thank you for being here. It is really an honor. And I just love your energy and now what you're coming up with and your whole journey. And I'm so excited that people are also going to listen because every story matters and it's so inspirational, empowering. So thank you. And please share your journey.
Well, okay, so we'll go back in time. Once upon a time, after after I graduated, I had been at the University of California, San Diego as a sociology major, and when I graduated, they wanted me to stay and on and be an instructor there, and I just was done with school. I needed to get out, and I just was starting to feel suffocated. I was ready. And so, and I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. Sociology is the study of human behavior, which is still to this day fascinates me. Why do people do what they do? Why do they make the choices?
Yeah.
What motivates people? And I look back on my career now, and I see that's a very strong thread that's kind of lasted all the way through. But we moved up to Los Angeles from San Diego, and I needed to get a job. So I went to UCLA, and I looked on the job boards, and I saw this job for at the American Film Institute, and it sounded fun, and it paid good, and I thought, well, I don't really know that I'm qualified, but I'm gonna try to set up an interview. So I went, and to my shock and surprise, they hired me. The two women that did the interview, they liked my clothes, they liked my hair. It had nothing really to do with my qualifications. So anyway, so they said, don't worry, we'll train you, you'll be fine, and I was like, okay, cool. They've got my back, I'll be great. And then, so my first day on the job, they went out to lunch and I was on my own for 2 hours. And the boss came out, the one that they warned me about actually as being the most temperamental. She was kind of an unusual character, very artistic, a little bit abrupt, well, very abrupt. And she also, just to give you the full picture, she had gold caps on her teeth and they had Egyptian hieroglyphics on the gold caps. So she
Ooh.
was
Did she ever
quite.
share why she had those hieroglyphics there? No.
No, no, no. I never did. I
That is
never did.
so
I'm sure she,
interesting.
yeah, I'm sure she felt it gave her some kind of power. So anyway, so the first day on the job, they leave for 2 hours. She comes out and she says, I want to make this letter. So, she, basically asking to dictate to me. I had no experience with this at all. So I sit down at the typewriter and I do my best to try to follow her and do the letter. And she sees it and she goes, "Oh my God, this is not business format. This is horrible." And she rips it up in my face. And I just actually started crying.
I would cry too.
Yeah, right.
I feel
And
that.
so, and I'm like, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm fired now, but I also just felt bad that I did a bad job, like that's not who I am, right? I just didn't know any better. So the girls come sauntering back from their extra long lunch and how'd it go? And I'm like, So, and then they're, oh, don't worry, don't worry. So, and so anyway, somehow we managed to make things work. The woman in the hieroglyphics started to see that I was a good writer, and she started involving me in writing the grant proposals for the directing workshop for women and independent filmmaker program. And there was another one I can't think of right now. So I became the main grant writer for those, even though I was like a ghostwriter. It wasn't, didn't get credit, but I did all the work. And our grants were always accepted. I did that for a couple of years. And but anyway, so the where we worked was at the Doheny Mansion up in Beverly Hills, which was this exclude. It's still there. It's in like 19. I don't know when it was built, maybe the 20s or the 30s. Magnificent building with columns and this marble floors and just like very elegant. And it was a school. They turned it into a school for filmmakers. So I was pretty blessed to be able to work in that environment. My first job, like, so, the grounds were like fully manicured, like an English garden, just amazing. And anyway, there was a man I started to talk to there. He was an older gentleman, and he started reading some of the things I'd written, and he said, you're really good, and I like your personality. You'd be a good public relations person. That was what he did for the institute. And so he took me under his wing, and he started to give me some, feedback on things. And he opened the door for me to get an interview at Rogers and Cowan, which was the largest public relations firm in the world at that time.
Wow.
And so I really, again, didn't think I'd ever stand a chance of getting the job, even with a recommendation. But somehow, they liked me. And so I got the job, and I ended up with the man who had the biggest reputation for being the most difficult to work with. So people were like, good luck. People don't last more than 4 days with him. You'll be lucky if it's a week, and just, we don't want you, don't take it personally, if you get fired,
They
people were like,
prepared you.
yeah, right, right. So I started working with him, and he actually, I thought he was great. He was a perfectionist, and he would correct things, and he would tell me what I did wrong, and I never took it as like a bad thing. I just felt like I could get better. So why not, take his instruction and learn. So I did. I was very hungry, so I kept learning, learning, learning. And, he started trusting me more and more and more. And pretty soon I became like a 50% account executive on our accounts that we handled, helping to write the press campaigns for people. I would set up interviews. And we had very impressive celebrities. George Benson, Michael Jackson was one of our celebrities. Bette Midler, anybody that you would have recognized at the time. Steve McQueen was just when I first came into the firm, like that was actually one of the first things was, we had to deal with his obituary because he passed right after I joined the firm. So
Really?
you do all these things, yeah, with PR that I didn't, I got to really see like how big it is. Product placement, where you get products into movies and things like that so that
Wow,
people
so
can
your
get
hands were
exposure.
really full. But
It,
if you were, give a moment, because I just think that it was so beautiful in terms of how you took it, right? So from that perspective to others, which was he's very hard, difficult to work for, they prepared you for the worst, and then you
yeah,
found that he was a mine of knowledge and work ethic that really that's why it built so much where you were able to pursue and continue working with people like that. And it's I just love that you see how you took that and you said, no, I'm taking this on because I want to learn. So I want someone who's not going to be so easy and that can really learn and grow, and you did. So
yeah.
that's beautiful. That part
Thank
is
you. Yeah, and he was a great teacher, and he had to be really good. First of all, he was the only black man in the firm. So that's like imagine the weight of that, like
yes.
and he was very, very good at what he did. And he was a nice guy, and he was gorgeous. A lot of the women had crushes on him. I actually had no interest in him in that way. Like he was beautiful. I had a husband, but even with that, just he was a beautiful man, like on the outside. And so anyway, we got along very well. Like, I became like I could just complete his sentences. I would just get things done. So anyway, he realized though that he couldn't rise any higher as a black man in terms of his station in the, his title and also his salary. Like they were never going to fully give him, open the doors for him to go up any higher. And so he moved on to start his own firm. And everybody thought, I would get the takeover because I'd already been working with the clients. I'd already been writing the campaigns and setting up interviews and all the things that go into PR. But what happened was they basically brought in a man who was, I think he might have even been an intern, and they put him in the position instead of me. And
Wow.
I was I was devastated. Like, and so was
Of
everybody else
course.
who knew me and knew what I'd been doing there. They couldn't believe that that happened. And he had a reputation for sorting through the trash when people were gone at night and all that. I love the cat in the background.
Bella.
So,
She loves to join the conversation.
oh, that's
She's
great. That's
got all
great.
this big heart, so she just loves
Oh,
to
I
be
love
part
it.
of this.
It's amazing. So I'll have to come over one day and pet her. So,
Yes. It's Bella. This is
oh,
Bella.
Bella, yeah, perfect, beautiful. So, yeah, so that was, kind of what happened there. He, so I ended up in they wanted me to stay and train this guy, and I was like, no way. And I was really halfway out the door. And then this woman who was running, the corporate division, had been keeping her eye. I didn't know she'd been watching me, and she said, "Look, don't leave. Let me come work with me. Let's work together, and I'll help you." And she was a real, like, at the time, a real women's. We didn't use the term women's liber, but she was very much for women's rights and helping promote women. And so, and we worked together really well. She loved me. But I realized pretty quickly, we had great clients, by the way. I had Finnair, I had Finlandia vodka. I had L'Hermitage restaurant, which was the only five-star Michelin restaurant in Los Angeles or in California, I think. And, but anyway, what happened was my old boss reached out to me and he said, "Look, I've got a vice presidency for you here. How about you come on board over here?"
Wow,
So,
beautiful. How did that
yeah,
make you feel after what you went through and the disappointment?
it was great. I was a little skeptical, I have to admit, because the guy that was his partner had a reputation for being a bit, wild. And I was kind of wild too, but, he was wild on a bigger scale. So I don't know how to describe that. That's a whole other story. I won't go down that road. But so I worked with them for a while, and just about the time I was getting burnout, they were starting to make some structural reorganization, and they needed to cut back on their budget. So it was like perfect. So I left, and I really wanted to go into pursue stories more. And I'd heard about this thing called story development, but I didn't really know very much about it. They're the people who read, and I would, read books, with the idea of making into a movie, write a script, write what's called a treatment, or package the talent with the script or the treatment and sell it to the bigger studios, right? So I went for an interview with a woman who turned out to be, she had just moved here from New York, and she was huge at that time in the cable movies. Right? It was when cable movies were happening. That's what they called them back then. And so I worked with her, and then there was another woman on staff who was the development person, and Doni sort of trained me about development, and I really started to learn. And then I took some classes in night school, and just on film and script writing and all that. And so in one of my classes, we had an assignment to write an analysis of David Beagleman, who was this very famous. You can all look him up on your own, but he turned out to be basically a famous criminal in the film industry. And so the teacher loved what I wrote, and he's like, would you like me? I'd love to open the door for you. I know a guy who's looking for a development person, and I think you're perfect. So of course I said yes, and it turned out to be my dream job. It was exactly everything I wanted. The salary was good. I had a nice title, and the guy, when I met him, I immediately he was like he was my brother. Just like we sarcasm, jokes, like we just our brains connected. So, but 6 months into the job, okay, so I'll just say our environment was very toxic. The people who owned, they were huge stars. I won't say any names. Who owned the company were doing drugs, And so I'd be having these meetings with, like some big producer, director, or talent or whatever, and you'd smell the pot, rolling down the hallway, and there were other substances as well.
Mm.
So and I it was challenging, but anyway, 6 months in, they fired him, and they told me to take over his job. And
Wow. And so how was that for you? Because after that whole thing with the man and now this guy's fired and you step in, which the tables turn now.
well, so it was kind of weird, honestly, because he was my friend. He'd become my friend. So first I had to
Mm.
call him and say, John, are you okay with me taking your job? Like, he's like, well, yeah, I know your situation. He knew I was, the main wage earner for our home. For the first 12 years of our marriage, I was the main support. And he goes, I know you have a mortgage, go ahead and take the job. It could be a good opportunity, even though we know they're difficult. So I got his blessing.
Wow.
But the thing was, they didn't want to pay me what they were paying him, and they didn't want to give me the title
Oh,
he had. So it was like bittersweet. I got the
right.
promotion with, my title was not nearly as elevated. They did elevate me, but it was after a lot of go back and forth. And then my pay ended up being, like maybe a quarter, or more like a third probably of what he was making, right?
Wow.
And so I had a choice, right? I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I could go look for another job, but anyway. So had been working about 40 hours a week, and now with the extra responsibility and all that I already had going on there, I ended up working 70 hours a week. So,
For the same
yeah,
salary.
yeah. Well, it was more, but it wasn't
Enough.
enough for 70
Right.
hours a week. And so I was taking home scripts on the weekend. I was reading. We'd go socialize with people. My husband would have fun. They'd be drinking wine over there in the corner, and I would smell the wine, and the food and everything else. But I was over on a chaise lounge reading scripts while everybody else was enjoying themselves. So
Mm.
it was I because I knew that as a female, I had to. It's just I was going to have to distinguish myself if I wanted to, and I already had, because of not getting that promotion in that first firm. I had already internalized it as not being good enough. So here again was this experience of not getting paid the salary, not getting the recognition, and again, my not good enough got activated. I felt like I had to perform harder. I had to do more. I had to do more. I had to be better. You know what I mean? I made an impossible standard for myself. But I will say that my record in Hollywood, I had a pretty great record in terms of the material I picked. About almost, I'd say 99% of the things that I recommended got made, but they didn't necessarily get made by the people I was working with.
Mm.
So I had great, like, ability to choose, discernment, intuition about, what would be a good hit. But anyway, so I started falling asleep on the job, and I was reading. I was so tired. My brain started to get foggy. I was exhausted. I felt funny, like not right. And I remember, like, at one point I checked my temperature. I wasn't really sick, but I was kind of. I had a fever. I had a constant fever.
Mm.
So I ended up. My body was basically quitting on the job for me. So I had to quit. So I quit. And the doctor said, look, we don't know what's going on. You have an elevated white blood cell count. You're, you have constant fever. You don't fit. You kind of seem like chronic fatigue syndrome, but it really wasn't conclusive. And it seems like this, and it's not conclusive. And they said, well, maybe you picked up something exotic in one of your travels, because I traveled quite a bit. And they're like, yeah, but we can't find anything. So eventually they gave up. And the doctor sent me home with a prescription for antidepressants. And he said, we think you're depressed. Go home and take these.
Oh, wow. From
And
exhaustion to depression? Jeez.
and I said, inside, I wasn't depressed until you just said that to me. Like, now that you've given up on me, I'm
Yeah,
basically,
that makes you depressed.
yeah, right. Yeah. And it was funny, the instruction to go home and sleep, it'll wear itself off. I'm like, I already was Sleeping Beauty. You know what I mean? Like, how much more, you know?
More sleep.
So, yeah. So I basically had to give up everything. And I spent 2 years in bed. And at that time, my husband ended up, actually, through a connection I had made in Hollywood, he got a great job through
Mm.
that. And and my parents had to come over and help. And I was basically, to walk from my bedroom, it was a very small house, from my bedroom to the bathroom was too much effort. I mean, that's how, like, I was just, there was nothing left. So you know, I started to learn like how to, I knew that the pills were not my way. I took the one antidepressant and I
Mm.
remember I collapsed on the top of the toilet, you know,
Ooh.
just, and I started bawling because I just felt so weak and helpless. And I remember that moment, you know, it was like, okay, it's not going to be this way. There has to be another way. And I dumped out all the pills
Oh.
and I never took, actually, for 40 something years, I never took another over the counter drug, prescription, anything, nothing.
You're one
Just went,
determined lady.
yeah, absolutely, you know, because we have things we don't even, and inside of us that we don't even know, abilities.
Yes.
And I studied spirituality and I changed my diet, I changed a lot of things. I became a more, you know, I started to understand more about my emotions and my boundaries. And in the process of trying to heal myself, the first thing was I ended up going to, and I didn't even realize how powerful that would be. I ended up at a transcendental meditation lecture and had my first experience of TM. And that was a big beginning of me starting to feel better. I was suddenly like, it was like, oh, I felt like somebody swept out the inside of me and I felt
Right.
clean inside, you know?
Right.
I didn't know I was dirty, but you know, so
So was that your shift where in your journey going from this corporate world, let's say, going tapping into this now because it was your health, right? So you started with your health and it started developing into going into deeper within
yeah,
you, right?
yeah, that was definitely, well, and there was, yes, so that changed everything. Like my whole trajectory because of that crisis, it changed how I look at the world. Everything changed. So
Wow.
because at that time, like, okay, TM was the first thing, and there were all these mystical things that happened. I won't go into them here because I could spend hours on that. There were a lot of things showing me that I was absolutely, this was the path I was supposed to be on.
Mm.
I also had an experience where I met a healer at a fair, you know, like on one of the days when I was like good enough to kind of walk or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a psychic fair and this woman did a tarot reading and she said, "Oh my God, you've been sick for a really long time." And I was like, "Oh my God, how does she know that?" Like, she goes, "Well, you know, you need energy balancing." I'm like, "What's that?" She goes, "Well, it's too hard to explain." She goes, "But I do it, you know." And she told me how much it was. And I'm like, I mean, I hadn't been working, right? So, but that night, somebody gave me a check for the exact amount that she was as a gift.
Oh,
And I was like,
beautiful.
okay, God, I get that, you know? So,
Take the gift.
yeah. So I had a healing with her, but what happened was she kind of flipped the tables. I started to lay on her table and she said, "Oh my God, your problem is you're a very gifted healer and you're an intuitive and you don't have any boundaries and you're like a sponge, you know?" So she said, "Get up off the table." And she had me work on her. And
Oh, wow. And
and I
how did
paid
that
for
feel
that.
for you?
I paid for that. A little weird, right?
Yes, I would say. You're supposed to wait, like what? Like wait, hold on. So you're supposed to pay me, right?
So I became her apprentice, and it became kind of, it was a little, she took advantage, you know, in some weird ways. Like she had her whole clientele, and under the, you know, guise of training me, she'd be like, "Well, what are you seeing on this person?" And I never meet them, right? It was just like etherically, what would I pick up? And
Yeah.
so I would tell her things, and sometimes it was really hard for me to say it because it was really personal stuff that I was
Mhm.
picking up, but I didn't know if it was right or wrong to share this. You know, it'd
Wow.
be pretty emotional. So, but I was always right, and she was getting paid by them and by me to be an apprentice, right? So, you know, she had a pretty good deal going on.
Yes, you
Um,
did.
and but then you know, there was just a series of doors that opened. A woman who ran like a metaphysical training, spiritual practitioner training in the valley. At the time, it was like Hogwarts, you know, for people. Um, she was at the store that she owned, the store that that psychic had read me at, and she saw me in there one day and she said, "Oh, I need you to become a spiritual practitioner because there's so much you have so much, like, you know, I want to train you." And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what these people are seeing, right? But so I did. You know, I did things like psychometry. If you're familiar with that, it's, you know, taking people's jewelry and telling them what I'm seeing. So she would hold up cards, and I would tell her what was on the other side, and I had things I didn't even know I could do things, you know. So I became, you know, kind of also learned from her, and then just subsequent to that, it started to transition into me learning from healers as in body workers. Like, so I started to do hands-on healing, and then also had, very profound experiences, eventually teaching healing around the world, and learning breath work and getting certified in all these. So I ended up with something like 30 something certifications in all these different modalities.
Mm.
My motivation was just to heal myself, but I ended up, working on people, right? Getting a clientele.
Well, sharing the medicine that you know that works for
Exactly.
you, right? So
Exactly.
powerful to be able to share that your medicine will
Yeah.
work for me. Let me share it with you. And of course, you have the gifts. So
Yeah. So that was
beautiful.
like, that was a big shift. And then, and there were so many other things that happened at that time, but I will just say that another pivotal moment for me in that transition was I had started to see this um, man in my dreams. And I would remember what he taught me when I woke up the next morning. And he was teaching me, and he was Indian, and he told me his name was Babaji. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who you are, or what, I'd never heard of him. And so that set me on a mission to try to learn more about this man. And I discovered that he had, they say, he had died 12 years before he started showing up in my dreams. So he was very much alive to me.
Hmm.
And eventually I decided I needed to go to where he had originally materialized in a cave in the Himalayas. And I stayed at his ashram. And my mom was totally against me going on this trip because I'd been so sick. They were worried I would, have more problems. She's like, "You got to get health insurance." I'm like, "Mom, I'm not getting health insurance. I don't believe in that stuff anymore,"
Wow.
And she said, "Well, I don't care. I'm buying it for you." So I ended up staying there for some time. And when I came back, I was a changed person. I realized that I had reclaimed a piece of my soul that I'd been looking for. It was a very profound, and I'm skipping over all the things that happened there. I mean,
Wow. There's a lot of experiences, huh?
yeah. So, but anyway, coming back to, the United States, and then, my continuing evolution, what started happening was my healing clients kept saying, that piece of advice you gave me, my business just jumped $1,000. I just jumped this. I gave a charity a plan for how to raise money, and they've raised have raised a lot of money. It's over $1 million from one of the suggestions. And people kept saying, you're a really good business coach. And so my process became like, okay, marrying those identities between the spiritual and the business world and the healing world, and bringing that all together to support women. I especially feel
Mm.
called to work with women. It's because I don't want them to have to go through the things I went through, in terms of my journey, if I can make it faster, shorter, whatever.
Right.
And so that's, how I evolved to where I am now.
Wow. What a journey. It's so amazing. So it was also like can you share a little bit of how you started integrating? So because from going from that feeling of I'm not good enough to really coming into these gifts and embracing them. How was that for you in that from that to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a huge part of my healing was learning to listen to my body and start to understand that the sensations I was experiencing in my body, this came out of the body work and the meditation, all these different things pulled together, right? But the sensations that we experience in our body are actually emotions, and that the emotions are carrying messages, and that those messages create thoughts, and then those thoughts, if we think them over and over again, create beliefs, and those create the actions, and those create our vibration and our result. So I know I went through that pretty quick, but that's what I was seeing is like, oh, okay, that thing in my arm means this. I had a very embarrassing lesson, which I talk about in the book, but basically where, my body was going out of its way to make sure that I got the message. We was having this thing where if I got angry, before all this, I wasn't really in touch with my emotions. And, I mean, I'd be happy, and I served a lot of people, somewhat on the codependent scale, I would say. And but I didn't understand that what was driving me to do that, that underneath that on some level was, wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be seen, approved, right? All nice things, but what's the real motivation underneath? But when I would feel angry, I didn't know I was even angry. I didn't know I was feeling resentment. And what happened was my body started showing me, like I would have my lip would get kind of itchy. And then I had about 2 minutes. And then if I didn't get out of wherever I was or express it, my lip would swell up like the size of Daffy Duck, Daffy Duck, and
No.
huge, like bee
Really?
sting. Yeah, really bad. And it was embarrassing. Like it looked so freakish. And so one time we were at dinner it's okay. Like my friends kind of knew me and it wasn't, most of them weren't seeing it. My neighbor was, she knew what was going on. But I remember having dinner at my parents' house, and we were at the dinner table, and I started to get the sensation. And I turned to my husband. I'm like, "We've got my lips doing the thing," and he's like, "Oh God, he knows." He knew we had to like, get out of there. So,
Wow.
we left, and within a couple minutes, we were in the car, and it was just like huge, right? And I don't even know what made me angry, but something obviously had triggered.
Right.
So I started to get into really understanding, like diving into, and I was feeling that too with the body work. When I would touch people, I'd be like, my whole thing was like, oh, okay, this is guilt, down here, and it's leading up into there, and it's actually causing your kidney to be not functioning the way that it should, right? And I was seeing things too, by the way. That started with the meditation. Like and I didn't have explanations for everything. I didn't understand all that was happening. It was like massive, like the gates opened, right? And
Right.
so anyway, so I started to bring that into my work. So understanding that, really getting down into the nitty gritty, that we have um, experiences that we don't necessarily think are that important or impactful, but they
Mm.
still register a lot of times with us as trauma, even though we don't see it as trauma. And that creates an emotional energetic field that once that's in our body, it doesn't just leave, it creates a pattern. And so if, for example, if and it's some of this is stuff that it's not just how do I say this, it can come from your experience, but it can also come gestationally while you're in the womb, things that happen to you in the womb. It can also come from things that you absorbed from your parents. So generational, right? I started to find things that went back 50 generations in people's, fields that were impacting their bodies, right?
Mm.
But it also would impact their income or their relationships or whatever. So, and it's never just one thing. I mean, there's all these balls. Like now I know this. There's so many energetic balls inside of us. They're layered within the tissue. Part of the work I do sometimes with my coaching clients is really, they're not even recognizing they're having an emotion necessarily, but it's an emotion keeping them from getting the clients they want or reaching. Um, Sorry, it just got to pop up on my screen.
Yes, I know. We're
So,
trying to, yes.
okay, I got
No
that.
worries.
So, keeping them from attracting the right mate or having a positive relationship or building their business or not getting past a certain level on their income. So, all of those things that it's affected by the energetic cloud, if you will, that's being held in the body. So I work with that source, like that cloud, because so if one emotion that hasn't been healed um, creates about 16,000 thoughts, approximately.
Wow,
That's a lot of,
16,000
yeah,
thoughts?
it's a lot of noise up here.
Ooh.
And then when you think that 95% of our thoughts are negative, and of the 95%, 85% of those are 95, I'm sorry, 85% are repetitive. 90, yeah, sorry, 95% are negative and 85% are negative. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
it's impacting. We're getting these messages over and over again. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Or he's the problem. He's the problem. He's the problem, right? Whatever it is that's going on in your mind. And truly, it's emanating from within us. So when we break through the energetic pattern and we heal it, your relationships change. Your perception of other people changes. Your perception of yourself. Your willingness to take risks and try things that you wouldn't have done.
Wow.
So
It's big.
yeah, it is big, and it's awesome. And so so all of this led me to really thinking about, like, okay, when you bring that into leadership, especially with women, and we've twisted ourselves into pretzels to fit into a man's idea of what an organization is supposed to look like. If you think about all organizations, they're hierarchical, they're, even military, right? It's like there's this level, this level, this level, this level, and we come in and we try to fit ourselves into that man's framework,
Right.
right? And so if you look at, like, you and I met in Global Woman, which is very feminine, but many of the networking organizations that are out there are based on a male model. Like, go up to this person and tell them this, and this about yourself. It's like a formula. They tell you what to do, you do it. And that's not a natural feminine inclination. A natural feminine inclination is to organically work with the trail of thoughts, right? Like, how do just like you ask questions here on the podcast from your intuition, right?
Yes.
So I started weaving that into this idea that, if we understanding energy the way that I do, what I'm looking to create, and the new paradigm for feminine leadership, as far as I'm concerned, is energetic coherence. So that, as the difference between coming into a room and saying, here's the agenda when you're working with a team trying to get a job done, and coming in instead with the attitude of, oh, let me sense what I'm feeling. What am I picking up in the room? And maybe we have a conversation about that before we get into the job that we're supposed to perform. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Very. So, energetic coherence. Wow. That's the first time I hear that terminology, because usually it's more, I always hear the coherence between the heart and the mind. Would
Right.
that be the same, or is that a different?
So it is and it isn't. So you probably never heard the term because I made it up. But
Okay.
it's I mean, I call them Carla-isms. I have a lot of them,
Oh, that's
but it's like
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
the way I see the world, right?
But I'd like to
So
know more about that energetic coherence. I'd love that
yeah.
because yes.
So the idea is that we have, okay, so there's a physiological scientific thing that happens when two people talk to each other. Like, we start to match each other's vibration. You've had that happen, right?
Yes.
You either get pulled up, you get pulled down, or you raise each other up at the same time, right? The
Yes.
the
Very
natural
true.
inclination, you know, so the natural inclination is to get to a place of coherence. Our physiology naturally does that. Our brains will pace each other and get on the same wavelength, right?
Wow.
But
Okay.
imagine extending that beyond you and I into like a web inside a room with a team, so that there's coherence amongst everybody. So instead of, like, a good analogy is like thinking of an orchestra. Like, you can, if you go into a typical meeting, there's maybe a bass playing and maybe an arbitrary flute once in a while, and maybe there's a drummer that's, maybe he's even off beat, right? So, but if they were coming from a place of energetic coherence, each of them would be playing to their fullest, right? Their maximum, most beautiful capacity, and it would blend together like a symphony. And
Yes.
that's, to me, energetic coherence.
Oh, okay. I love that because, yes, I found myself in places where there's a group of people, and this is with music. So we start playing, okay, let's do the drums. And before you know it, it's the drumming it's in harmony with each other, all the drums. And it creates this rhythm that's a natural, organic, and that
Mm.
would be energetic coherence because it's all like being coherent in the group. And I
Right.
love that. I love your term. Can I borrow it? I
Well, it's
love
in
it
my
because
book.
it's so
It's in
true.
my book, and
Ah,
I'll
we're
be.
gonna talk about your book. I'm excited to know. Is that your, how many books is that? Like number what?
So this is my third book. My first one I myself wrote and self-published. That was all about the toxins in our makeup, and because, again, part of my recovery became learning about how those toxic substances in our household, in our makeup, in our personal care products are killing us. People. That's why so many people are getting cancer. So that began a thing about cleaning toxins out of my house.
Wow.
Out of my personal care. I so and I it also brought me into learning about it, I became an expert on essential oils. I've studied them for 30 years. So I even helped and harvest and distill oils. So that was also part of my
Oh,
journey. So
that must have been
yeah,
so amazing to be part of the actual process.
oh, it was cool. It was cool. And then talking to the scientists and starting to understand things. And
Ooh,
most people talk, they've been trained by their, mine is an MLM. I still work with them, Young Living Oils, and so I'm a distributor for them. And
they're
I,
great.
yeah, they are great. And
Yeah, Young
I
Living.
actually had the good fortune to be able to camp behind the back door of Gary Young's house, who is the founder of the company, and work beside him out in the fields, right? Get to harvest, distill the whole thing, and
Oh,
then watch the scientists analyze the oils, understand a little bit about, okay, here's the chemistry and here's why we do it this way. So it really changed, how I looked at things. And they're very much in alignment with everything that I do, right? That philosophy of that our body has the ability. This is what I learned from my experience also, that our body has the ability to heal us of anything. We have all the natural resources. This is a very complex system.
right.
I'm not saying it's easy. Everybody has to figure out exactly what their path is to do it. And there's no
Yes.
one path fits all kind of thing. But understanding your emotions in your body and how they're impacting you can change your health completely. And so it's a very rare thing. I mean, I do occasionally get ill, but it's very rare. And most of the time, if I start to feel sick, I can locate the emotion that went on that I didn't actually allow myself to, tap into, access that and heal it hopefully before I get to the point of, like really sick. But I've had a couple, I've still had my experiences. Last year I did get I lost my voice. It was a whole thing. But anyway, so back to I don't know. I kind of got off on a tangent.
No, no, it's
Um,
wonderful because you're sharing about your first book,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is all about it, because that's why you healed yourself. So now you want to share, which is this the beautiful part when you share what worked for you and what you research to even get better and share it with others. So what they can do to have a healthier way of life,
yeah.
that they can really pinpoint like, oh, before it gets worse, what can I use? Essential oils are amazing. I mean, I know I've used
Amazing.
them, and Young Living has been always on my number one because
No,
there's so many things that you can use, right? So that's
no.
wonderful. And so your second book
So that
is
was my first book. The second book was called Modern Women in the Modern Business World. This is that one. This one went to number one on Amazon and also in Germany. I don't know why, but it went up, especially in Germany. So we had a really good result with that one. And that one was really about, I talk about it's a comparison between when I was living in India, I climbed Mount Kailash, it was 17 hours up shale. Okay, just like, so you climb a
what?
few feet, you slide back 2 feet, you climb 10 feet, you go back 5 feet. It was a
What an
very,
experience.
very, yeah, intense. I wanted to quit. I was crying my way up the mountain, doing breathing, and I wanted to quit. And there was this woman who kept saying to me, don't quit, keep going. It was kind of funny. And well, I don't know if we have time to get into that story,
Yes,
but
of course. Yeah, please.
okay. So just quickly, I'll give you the shorter version. So we had a Sherpa, we had a guide, right, taking us up the mountain. And it was very treacherous. Like even just to get to the base of the mountain, we went through this valley where the Ganges River flows. You cross the river, you go through these fields where the grass is like up to here, and they're saying to you, be careful because there's tigers here. Like this is your pet food here. So, stick with us, right? Like there's monkeys everywhere. It's crazy. You're out in the middle of nowhere and
Yeah.
and you don't hear anything. It's just like silent. It's beautiful. And so, anyways, and then we were weaving our way through this valley, and then I suddenly see a little Indian child that's maybe like 6 years old, and he comes up to me, and he's begging, and I'm like, well, I brought candy. I had Jolly Rancher watermelon candies on me for the kids. So I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's what I brought this for. So I give the kid a candy, and pretty soon I'm like Peter Pan, right? Like there's like 50 kids around me. They all want candy. Luckily I had enough. They wanted their picture taken with the white woman. because they don't see people, of my color back there. And I'm darker than a lot of, American people, but, because I have a little bit of a brown tone to my skin, but I mean, to them, I was white, white, white. So anyway, so we climb through that. We climb up this mount, this first mountain, and it's really bad. And I want to quit. I want to quit. I want to quit. And this woman keeps going, just keep going, you'll be fine, stick with it. It's not that much further. So she encouraged me, and I just remember so many breakdowns. Like that's all I did is climb my way up this mountain. And finally, when you're climbing at those altitudes, you have to listen to the Sherpas because it's a matter of life and death. And they're
Yes.
like, don't eat, don't drink, nothing till we give you permission, and we'll tell you when it's okay. So we finally get to this, plateau, and they say, okay, now you can have something to drink. Don't eat too much, blah 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 blah.
Right.
And I go, oh, okay. And I think that what I'm looking at now is the top of the mountain, that it's like inside. And I go to the Sherpa and I say, that's it, right? That's where we're going. He goes, no, 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 not that mountain, Missy. That one. I was like, oh my God, we
How
hadn't
did
even dented it.
how did I get myself into this, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, I couldn't turn around and go back because they'd already warned us about how dangerous it was, to be on your own, right? And so they put the fear into me, about that. And I didn't know. They're the experts. So anyway, I finally did make it up the mountain. Like I said, 17 hours later, I was bruised, bleeding, just feeling defeated. And when you get to the top of the mountain, you need to take your shoes off because it's considered holy land. So okay, I've climbed all this way. Of course, I'm going to take my shoes off, even though I can see it's thorns and rocks. That's my reward for doing this. And the woman who had encouraged me, she sat down on a rock and she said, I don't care. I'm not going any further. That's it. I'm not taking my shoes off. And
Woo.
she never finished the climb, which is amazing. And what was up there was which was part of the reason I wanted to go, was this very famous hermit who lived up there. And there's, it's very spiritual energy. I mean, it's like super, super. The minute you get up there, you realize, oh my God, I've stepped into something I don't even know. So he doesn't wear clothing, so he didn't come out of his tent, and we're around him, like around the tent, and we're hearing him sing, and I'm just getting higher and higher and higher. I mean, I like it was amazing. And I did bring him a gift because I brought him, and so I never saw um, his his full face, or I mean, I saw his arms. And he received it, and then we eventually made our way back down. But yeah, so that was quite a climb. So I talk about that in the second book that went to bestseller.
And you, you
It was
you have to read it. I mean,
yeah.
it's like, wait, because I'm like, wait, I want to know more. I want to know more, like how, like what that experience meant for you, if it
Yeah.
shifted you, how it shifted you, how you came back, and what that meant for you in
Yeah.
as a human being, and receiving all that energy. That's
Yeah.
just amazing, right? So
It Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I think that but for me now, the takeaway is like, look, whether it's my career or your career or somebody else's out there, or maybe not even your career, but to me, the analogy or the comparison between that and the entrepreneur's journey is quite obvious, right? Because we
yes,
start out, those of us who are out there self-employed, especially women in business, it's like, oh my God, can I make it, right? And we go up and we slide backwards, and we go up and we slide backwards, and we wouldn't complete some of our things without that fellowship, without another woman saying, or somebody encouraging us to go, and we don't know where we're going. And I was lucky to have a Sherpa and a guide. So I followed the experts, which is like now, when I talk to potential clients, I'm like, look, you can do the journey yourself, or you can hire me as your coach and your mentor, because I've climbed the mountain. I've already, why would you have to go through that again? Now, I can help you. I can be your Sherpa, right? I can be your
right.
guide and help you climb that mountain much easier than you would have done on yourself in much less time, right? So anyway, but the whole idea of, going through the struggles, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And then finally making it to the top and
Right.
recognizing, oh yeah, it was absolutely worth what I went through. And and then the takeaway from that is, which, I've had before, but again, all of these experiences hit you in different ways. It was just
Right.
like, okay, there's so much more that I'm capable of that I don't realize, and similar to, the first, well, my experience of walking on fire. I was at a retreat up in Northern California, and it wasn't with Tony Robbins like people love to co. This was the real deal. Not that his isn't, but I actually helped build the fire. Walked on fire, and and one of the things came away with was I've walked on fire. I can do anything. It's like,
Right.
and so it's just that, and that's what meditation helps you develop, that strength of mind, like recognizing that you're not your thoughts, you're not those limitations,
Right.
and again, going back to what I do with my work is like, can we, if we helped you heal those emotions, imagine what would dissolve that you've considered barriers for yourself,
Yes.
so
Well,
anyway.
that what you described with the mountain and how you were like, that big challenge that you wanted to give up, but yet there was your spirit was stronger, right, and pushing your body through, and it
Yeah,
showed you that there are no, we create the limitations,
exactly.
and then the fire. So it's like I'd say I love to see how it's wonderful to see how the elements showed
Mhm.
you that, and that's what
Right.
we have on this beautiful earth, this planet. It's just filled with so much beauty, and that they can actually show us be and say, hey, look what you have, look who you are, right?
Right.
So it's beautiful to be able to say, hey, you know what, I did that and I pushed through what I thought were limitations, then there are no limitations.
Right.
So
Right. Well,
yeah.
yeah, and also just, I don't know, like, it changes the way that all of these things, as you overcome these challenges, whether it's this or it's a health challenge or it's something other big. Everybody's got a project that they have to work through in
Right.
this life at some point, right? And I think it changes your perception of reality, and I'm I don't know. I think that I would not have made that climb had it not been for, I don't even know that woman's name anymore, that helped talk me through that. But it was kind of ironic, right? That here she was, she'd been so instrumental in helping me to complete my journey, and she would not herself take those last steps. And I see that a lot in business where women are so close to hitting that next level for themselves, and they self-select themselves out of the process, and they don't even realize they're doing it,
Mm.
because it's so much easier to buy into with, I was kind of on a rampage. I'm still going to do this on video, but a week ago, because there was this woman I was talking to, and I knew that I could help her with her challenge. Like, I knew there was more than one challenge, and I was so clear, and it was just so interesting for me that she really argued for her limitations, and I couldn't get her to in that moment, to be willing to even look at the possibility that there might be another way to look at those situations that were going on with her. So most people will argue for their limitations. They want it. It's a natural process with the brain. The brain wants it easy, and there's a great famous picture that I've seen where, there's a gym and there's a set of stairs going up to the gym, and there's two escalators also going up to the gym. Not a single person is on the set of stairs. They're all on the escalator going to the gym, right?
Oh, ironic. It is ironic.
Yeah, because the brain wants it easy. And
Right.
and I feel like the work I do with women makes it easy, as easy as it can be in terms of moving through that stuff very quickly.
Right.
It sometimes, I mean, like, we'll clear stuff in one session that might have taken 20 years worth of therapy, had somebody done the traditional route. So, anyway, so a lot of this is all about shifting perception, shifting our mind, and shifting our energetic frequency so
Yes.
that we match. The reason we don't attract what we want is we're not an energetic match. If you raise your energetic level and you become a match, then you start to manifest those things that you're looking for. So
I so agree with you, and you really truly inspire me, Carla. I am so
thank
like
you.
um I was really looking forward to this for you to share your journey, because I just felt there was so much, so rich, being in the corporate world, and I relate to it because that's been my journey as well. And so it's so wonderful to see. And what you describe is like, oh my gosh. And it's so true. We, as women, we limit ourselves. And, of course, it applies to men and women, but we're talking here about women and, why I joined the Global Women. So can you talk a little bit about Global Women and then your next book that's coming
Yeah.
up? That's the big kahuna, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah, we'll talk about
excited
that.
about that.
Yeah, the Radiant Revolution. So yeah, well, I don't remember now. It's been probably 7 years or 8 years than when I first joined Global Woman. It's, international organization. I took it upon myself to launch a completely new chapter in Orange County, California, where,
Yay!
yay,
Yay!
there had not been a chapter before. I came in when COVID was uh, around the time COVID was just starting to happen. We were switching from in-person meetings to virtual, and it was an interesting time. The club has had to morph. We had like 50 clubs around the world, and we dropped down, and now we're building back up very aggressively. We just had Dusseldorf open this week, which is very exciting. Brussels opened about 3 months ago or 4 months ago. Love the new director. We just opened another one in England, another location in England. So our club is all about helping empower women. Our motto is, if you want to empower women, give her a microphone. So we want to raise we want to raise people's visibility and
Yes.
help women have the confidence. It's very in alignment with the coaching I do, and it's just that it's different. Obviously, when I work one to one versus what we do in the
Right.
meetings. But since I became aware of the fact that the things that had happened to me were not because I wasn't good enough. They really had to do with a culture that had gotten into this belief system of men are better, because they're men, right? Or whatever. I have nothing against men. I'm not a men basher, but as a matter of fact, I have a great husband who's very supportive. But I think it's important that we recognize that a lot of the limitations that or barriers that we hit are literally about our sex or about our race or about whatever. You pick one.
Right.
And so so when I have an opportunity, for me it was about and Global Woman um, gave me some confidence that I didn't have, and I still feel like myself. I like to say that you never master anything, you're always mastering, right? And so I continue to, by being involved, it's helping me grow more as a person and still continue higher levels of confidence, to learn different things, business strategies and things maybe that I didn't know back then. And it was my first foray into publishing in a collaborative group. That was that book that went to bestseller. So yeah, so I really love it, and so people are interested, they can reach out to me for Orange County Club, and it
Yes,
doesn't
please
matter.
do tell us more so that people can really reach out to because I loved it. I mean,
Yeah,
I love it and I just started, not too long ago, but I just
yeah,
look forward to all the things that are being created and the connection, the type of women that are in Global Women is that's really touched my heart. It's community. They're
yeah.
really heartfelt and saying, hey, it's like they want to give a service to others. And it's
Hmm.
just all about that service and sharing the experiences, sharing what works for them in whatever journey they're in. And it's just so amazing. I'm so blessed to be part of that. So just tell us how they can reach you and contact you.
Yeah, the best way is to, I would say, look, if you go to Global Women Orange County, you can Google that, or we're going to have my contact information. Maybe I'll give you that after we do the thing, and you can put it somewhere, maybe on a
Yes.
slide or something.
Yes.
And I'll have different ways to reach out because
Perfect.
I think that would be the best. And yeah, and I do have calls with people so we can talk about it more. But the best way is actually, contact me, sign up, come to a meeting, just like you did. Have
Yes.
the experience. If it's for you, great. If it's not, we bless you and you're on your way. So
Absolutely. They
yeah,
can contact you. They can contact me because,
yeah, yeah,
also whatever works, we get you in and then you can see it. And
that's
so,
great.
yes, thank you for sharing that. So, and about your book, I'm
Okay,
excited.
so woohoo! So this is
Woohoo!
the
Talk
book.
about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So
Look how beautiful.
hopefully my second bestseller. I love the cover. I
Yes,
I
it
des-
is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I designed this with some help from my book coach, but I basically had the concept, and she had to make it. I wanted it brighter, and so think she changed some of the color for me to make it more what I wanted it, the feel I'm looking for. It's a very quick read. It's only 99 pages, I think,
Yeah.
just under 100. So, you can read it pretty quick and on an airplane or whatever. It's not like I just made a conscious decision not to write a manifesto because I'm like, this is enough to get you to understand where I'm coming from. The idea here is that, some of you may want me to come in and speak to your organization to help your organization become a better organization. Inspiring women's groups, right? Inspiring women around the world to
Yes.
pursue and share their voice and their message. But the book is really about the rise of feminine. It's the Radiant Revolution, the rise of feminine wisdom, and the future of leadership. So it's all about my take on how leadership is evolving. I feel like, and many of us have commented on this out loud, that we are coming into the age finally of women being,
Yes.
women being more recognized and women being ready to go, hey, you know what? Thank you very much, sir. But how about it's my turn now, to talk about it. You see that we have more women, in political positions than we've ever had before, and women wanting to be influencers about what's going on with the planet and all of those things.
Right.
So it's that's the reason I wrote it was that I was hoping I could share this paradigm with like nonprofits and NGOs and like the United Nations and people who are ready to adopt a new model and really help them put it into action. you know and I can it's it can be from coaching from just a leader to leader, like me helping the head of an organization,
Right.
a CEO or whatever, or it could be me coming in and speaking or training a group, um, bringing in the this is, I call it energetic intelligence. That's what it is to me. It's
I
so we
love
have
that.
so we
Energetic
have
intelligence.
yeah,
Love
we have
it, Carla.
emotion.
I love these words
Thank
you're
you.
coming up
Thank you. Oh,
with.
I have some great terms, but
Ah,
and some really cool stuff. You have to come to my free webinar when I do that
yes,
again.
absolutely. 100%
So
I'm there. I am so sold. Yes, I'm there.
but yeah, so it's like, there's IQ, our, intellectual,
Right?
there's EQ, which is emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
and then there's, the energetic intelligence. I don't want to say EQ because I mean ENG because that's a trademark thing, but energetic intelligence is really about like understanding and being willing to feel what's going on around you in the moment and utilizing that to create more connection. And
I
that's,
love
I think, what
it.
we need. Yeah.
And so do you explain that in the book? That's so like laid out in the way that
Yeah.
works?
I do talk about it. I do talk about, just some simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps,
Yes.
basically for a leader who's coming in and speaking. And but really getting, and this is enough to get you started, but really to get that micro, like the kind of teaching where I'd like to see it implemented. That's when you bring me in to help you to understand. Because it's like I was saying to somebody earlier, I actually did an earlier interview this morning. I did one at 12 o'clock this morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 to 1 a.m., with a podcaster in Cyprus. And then I was on with a gentleman in Germany today. And I was talking about this whole thing where, basically, if you think of our life as we're in a fishbowl, right? And you can't see the water, right? And you don't even know that there's something containing you there. You can't get to it. You just accept it as normal.
Right.
And so what I do is I take people outside the fishbowl so they look in instead of being in the fishbowl and looking out, which they don't even realize they're being in the fishbowl, if that
Yes,
makes
that is correct. I know what you mean. And yes, that is very true.
yeah.
That's,
So
yeah.
perception is everything, and we don't recognize most people. They're like willing to say, okay, I maybe if they've had some kind of personal development work, they understand on some level that they create what goes on in their reality, um, co-create whatever. But where it really gets interesting for me is how far are you willing to take responsibility for what's going on in your reality, because you have to accept that you created the good and the things that you consider the contrast, maybe not so good for you.
Right.
And, but those not so good things are what help shape us into more powerful individuals. Like my experience at the PR firm, like my experience in the company where I got sick. They were they were not fun experiences, but they were necessary for my growth. And I understand now, and
Yeah.
it's also great for me to look back and go, you know what? It wasn't about me not being good enough. That's
No.
cool, you know?
Not at all, right? What a
Yeah,
that
right.
realization. I just, okay, now I get it. It's
Yeah,
not about that. No, but it's, yes, it's beautiful. It's, where we talk about that personal accountability, responsibility to what we do with ourselves. What do you want to create? And whatever you're feeling in your heart and you're matching that energy, it's going to come on the out because it starts here. I mean, and then
right,
you see it come out and in the
right.
external. So I absolutely, yes, I love what you're sharing. So where could they find your book?
Okay. So the best thing, I'm not sure how quickly you're going to air this. How quickly are you going to air this?
Oh, I'm
I
gonna,
forgot.
yes, I would say, oh, when is your launch date? And I will push
February
it.
February 25th, my
Okay.
birthday, by the way.
Oh, we are having a party. I'm invited. I'm self-inviting self-invite. But yeah, I will definitely make it so that it's before the launch date.
Okay, so
My
what I would
commitment to
say,
you.
thank you. So what I would say is to people should go to my getcarlasbook.com. So you get on the launch emails. It's get and then CARLAS, no apostrophe, obviously,
Okay.
but getcarlasbook.com. And then that will send you information on the launch. All right now, people are just getting preliminary launch emails.
Right.
I haven't set the time. What I'm going to do that day is I will be on Facebook live part of the morning that day, just celebrating, talking to people, whatever. And I haven't actually figured out exactly how I'm going to do what I want to do.
Just
So
make sure you send us the notification out there so we
yeah,
can
yeah,
share.
you will definitely get that. And yeah, and I just welcome people to connect with me there. That's a great way. The other thing, they can go to carlacohencoaching.com and get on my list, or if you look down at the bottom of the webpage, there's a way to get on my list so you know what's happening. But I periodically do these free webinars, so that's another way to connect and start to understand more about, in a very more nitty gritty way, what I do. But I'm so grateful.
Love.
Thank you again for having me.
No,
And
thank
yeah,
you, Carla. What an honor, and I can't wait for your webinar and to for your lunch date. And so, thank you for sharing this beautiful journey. You really touch my heart and into what you've created and that the gifts that you embraced and that whole being in that world that taught you a lot in the corporate world. Let's just say the Hollywood corporate world to what is this saying, hey, being of service to community of women. And so that because it all trickles down. I mean, you do to women and women go to the man. And then you just see that balance, with the two energies of the male and female. And that's beautiful, beautiful work. And I can't wait to read that book. It's just, I could just see it. I have to get it very soon. So I
yeah,
want to thank you from my heart to your heart. You're just a special light in this on this planet, and thank you for all that you have done and what you are doing and continue to do. Thank
thank you.
you.
Awesome.
So I look forward to the launch.
All right, me too. I'll see you there.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
right.